You were never a real father. Those words, thrown like a gunshot into the silence, shattered the house. Mark stood in the kitchen doorway, fists clenched, staring at his son. The same boy he'd once carried on his shoulders, read bedtime stories to, taught to ride a bike. Now 18, the boy looked at him like a stranger, a threat, an enemy. Mark didn't respond. He turned and walked out to the backyard, where the damp evening air smelled of fallen leaves and garden beds. He still stubbornly tilled every spring. No one followed him, not his wife, not his son. Only silence, broken by a neighbor's distant dog bark. This wasn't their first argument, and likely not the last. But in that moment, Mark understood. Something had broken for good. Not just teenage rebellion or ordinary disagreement, something deeper. The house they'd lived in for 15 years stood on a quiet street lined with tall trees and neat lawns. Inside, warmth, books, family photos on the walls, the morning scent of coffee. Everything looked normal. But normalcy is fragile, especially when children grow up and parents still try to control their lives as if they can't think for themselves. Their son, Lucas, had been accepted to college, but not the one Mark wanted. Not engineering. Not a prestigious university with a secure future. He chose a small-town art school 1,000 miles from home. You draw, Lucas. That's a hobby, Mark had shouted then, feeling control slip away for the first time. It's my life, his son replied, not with anger but exhaustion. The exhaustion of never being heard. Mark's wife, Ellen, tried to mediate. She'd always been gentler, more patient, but even her diplomacy couldn't bridge the gap. He's an adult, Mark, she'd whisper at night in the dark. You can't decide for him. I don't want him to make a mistake, Mark would reply, and in that was the whole truth. Fear. Fear that his son would choose the wrong path, face failure, poverty, disappointment. Fear that he, Mark, wouldn't be able to protect him. But Lucas wasn't asking for protection. He was asking for trust. The fight that led to those words, "You were never a real father," started over money. Mark refused to pay for art school. He offered a compromise. Go to the local college, double major, and draw in your free time. Lucas laughed bitterly. You don't even try to understand. To you, anything that doesn't make money is a waste of time. I'm trying to give you the best future possible. My future isn't yours. And then Mark said what he shouldn't have. You're selfish. You only think about yourself. Lucas froze. Then, quietly, almost a whisper, and you think you love me, but you only love your idea of me. Mark felt the ground vanish beneath his feet. The next day, Lucas packed his things. Not everything, just the essentials. A backpack, a laptop, a few canvases. He didn't say where he was going. He hugged his mother and walked out. Ellen cried. Mark stayed silent. He wanted to stop his son. Wanted to say, wait, let's talk. But pride, the habit of being the head of the household, the fear of appearing weak, all of it tied his tongue. A week passed. Lucas didn't answer calls. Only a short text to Ellen. I'm okay. I need space. Mark began noticing things he'd ignored before. Childhood photos of Lucas, always holding a pencil. His drawings pinned to the fridge for years. Even in school notebooks, marginal sketches full of life and motion. He'd always drawn, and Mark had always called it a phase. He remembered once, when Lucas was 13, coming home with a bruise under his eye. Got beat up for drawing in class, he'd said. But his eyes burned. But I drew the teacher. It turned out awesome. Mark had scolded him then. Stop getting distracted. Focus on your studies. Now he understood. For Lucas, drawing wasn't a distraction. It was his language, his way of being himself. Ellen wouldn't let Mark retreat into silence. You have to talk to him, she said one evening over dinner. Not as the father who knows everything, but as someone who wants to understand. What if he won't listen? Then at least you'll have tried. Mark spent sleepless nights drafting messages. deleting them, calling, hanging up, afraid of hearing a cold voice or worse, silence. But one morning he finally dialed. Lucas answered. "Hey," he said, no anger, just weariness. I want to apologize." Mark began. "I didn't understand. I thought I was protecting you. But really, I was just scared." A pause. "I wasn't perfect either," Lucas said softly. "I yelled. I blamed. But it hurts, Dad. It hurts that you don't believe in me." The word dad hit harder than any accusation. "I do believe," Mark said, "and it was true. I just need time to learn how to let go." "I need time too," Lucas replied, "but I don't want us to lose each other." They agreed to meet not at home, but in neutral territory. A small cafe in the next town. Lucas looked tired but calm. He brought one canvas. "This is you," he said, placing it on the table. Mark saw himself not idealized, not heroic. A weary man with crow's feet, hands scarred from gardening, eyes full of worry and love. "I don't draw what I see," Lucas said. "I draw what I feel." Mark didn't know what to say. He just nodded and put a hand on his son's shoulder. "I'm proud of you," he said, "even if I didn't always show it." Lucas smiled for the first time in a long while. Family fights aren't always shouting matches and slamming doors. Sometimes they're silences louder than words. Sometimes they're years of things left unsaid. Mark realized, being a parent isn't about control. It's about being there, even when your child's path seems wrong to you. It's about learning to listen, even when you're afraid. He didn't know how things would turn out. Maybe Lucas would become a famous artist. Maybe he'd quit and become a programmer. But now Mark knew one thing for sure. He'd be there, not as a commander, but as a father. A real one,